Welcome to the Falmouth Chamber of Commerce.
The Falmouth Chamber is dedicated to working on behalf of our members to make Falmouth a better place to live, work, and conduct business. We are committed to developing the economic, cultural, educational, and civic interests of our community and welcome the support from all organizations to achieve our combined goals. Whether you call Falmouth home, are a summer resident, or a visitor, we hope you take advantage of all that the Chamber has to offer.
I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Falmouth Select Board. It is Monday, February 13th. It is 6:30 p.m. I would ask that everyone please silence your cell phones, and if anyone is privately videotaping or audio recording this public meeting, to please notify me as the chair. Noel, thank you. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have a proclamation for Black History Month. Mr. Brown?
So, whereas Black History Month was first celebrated nationally in 1976 during the United States bicentennial, whereas Black History Month has a rich cultural history throughout the United States, symbolizing the enduring strength and significance of civil rights pioneers, including Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Phyllis Wheatley, and Frederick Douglass. And whereas the town of Falmouth must continue to move forward towards equality, recognizing the barriers faced by the black community and addressing structural racism and social, political, and economic inequalities. And whereas Black History Month is an opportunity to recognize the many contributions and achievements by black leaders and members of our community in the town of Falmouth throughout the course of our history. And whereas this year's Black History Month theme is Black Resistance, bringing awareness to the historically underserved black community through oppression in various forms. Black Resistance recognizes the achievements and progress that the black community has made through opposition to racial constructs and prejudices, as is evident through the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act, and increased representation in government and politics. And whereas Black History Month is a time to celebrate and acknowledge the significant history and contributions of the black community throughout the town of Falmouth, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and the United States, as well as to bring awareness to the challenges faced by the black community and the methods in which they have tirelessly worked to conquer such adversity. We now, therefore, Nancy Taylor, Angela Scott Price, Samuel H. Patterson, Douglas C. Brown, and Edwin P. Scott Zielinski, members of the Falmouth Select Board, do hereby proclaim February 2023 to be Black History Month in the town of Falmouth and urge all of our citizens to observe this month with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities. We have hereunto set our hand and caused the great seal of the town of Falmouth to be affixed on this day, 13th of February 2023.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Thank you very much, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
Okay, recognitions. Any recognitions from the board? Ms. Scott Price?
First, I'd just like to recognize and keep in our thoughts all the families and people in Turkey and Syria. The last death count was 35,000, which is more than the year-round population of Falmouth. So just keep that in our hearts and our minds as we move through with our lives. I also would like to recognize that we had an extremely cold spell a few weekends ago, and there were a number of people in our community who really went above and beyond to make sure that those in our community who were not housed had a place to be. And so I would like to recognize Susie Hopman, the Director of Falmouth Human Services, belonging to each other is Gina Torrielli and Carol Greenlee, Stephanie Rault, Outreach Coordinator at HAC, Mark Abbott, Falmouth High School Social Worker, and the AIDS Support Group of Cape Cod Outreach Workers. So thank you all for everything that you did to support our community, especially those who did not have housing.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
I was going to mention that same thing, and I didn't have all the names prepared the way you do, but I found it nice to learn. I actually contacted Mr. Johnson Staub on Friday because I was thinking, wow, we've had such a mild winter. A lot of people are going to be caught off guard with this cold snap, and it was serious. And so I asked Peter what kind of accommodations there are, and he said there's private accommodations. It's very nice to hear that 2 of the Falmouth motels put up rooms for people. All they have to do is go and check in at the police station, and as long as they're not overly impaired, I'm guessing, I imagine that's why they check them in there, and they can get a free stay at a motel and safe place to stay, so that was great, and I guess quite a few people did take advantage of it, so that's good to know.
Certainly the way a community comes together.
Right.
Any other recognitions? Okay, announcements. We have the volunteers in Falmouth Public Schools. Tracy Crego, please. And they have a video sharing their 40th anniversary.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Tracy Crego, and I am the Executive Director for Falmouth Volunteers in Public Schools, or VIPS for short. I'd like to thank members of the Select Board for giving us this opportunity to share a very short video created by Brian Switzer Video to celebrate our 40th anniversary. So VIPS is all about people. For 40 years, we have been making connections and building relationships between the community and our schools. These relationships matter, and they make a significant impact on our students. We could not do what we do without our volunteers and supporters, including many of you in this room who have been involved as volunteers, administrators, and supportive folks, including many of our board members. You might recognize us by wearing our jackets. So I'd like to thank all of them and our program leaders who are here this evening, as well as our town leadership, and of course, Drade Geisiger, our VIP secretary, for unwavering support and enthusiasm for the program. So I'm going to show the video, if I can get this right here.
Being a volunteer is awesome. It's fun because you get to interact with the kids.
I think I've seen my kids I work with grow up a lot already, and I think I'm growing with them in my own way.
It's something I look forward to every week. I like being with young people. It makes me feel part of the whole world again instead of just a little group of my own age.
We have programming that runs the gamut, focusing in 4 core areas. So mentoring is probably our biggest focus, but we also do the academic support, which is that tutoring piece. We also do a lot with financial literacy to be able to get through school with an understanding of things they're going to need afterwards. And then lastly, wellness. We all know that wellness is an important piece, not just physical wellness, but also mental health.
My role was, as an administrator of an upper grade school, I embraced the idea of having the community in the school. It was going to be valuable for kids, for teachers, and in terms of community understanding. It can be easy for people who are not related to the schools to say, oh, wait a minute, they got all those vacations, they don't deserve anything extra, they don't need more. But if you have 1,000 people who are in the schools watching teachers work, you got voices in the community saying, wait a minute, I've watched them. They deserve this support because it's such a win for everybody.
As a local business, that's what we're always trying to do. We really care about connecting with the community. So I think that VIPS is really just an amazing organization because they always have their finger on the pulse of like what's going on with the students and what's going on with the kids, the next generation.
Again, it's for the community, for the kids that are growing up. That's going to be the future. So I'm looking at it both ways, from community and as a business. It does give me satisfaction that I did a good deed.
I do because I enjoy working with the kids. I'm a retired college teacher.
And I'm just really interested in all the things he's done in engineering and stuff like that.
Makes me feel happy because just to help the kids and help the community, and makes everyone feel a bit more united.
So volunteering for me, it's a great experience to be able to kind of teach the youth. It just feels good feeling. So
one of the things that the volunteer program offers is so many different ways for people to interact with kids, and they can find the way that fits them best. And so that careful organization and preparation of people has been very important.
So one of the things we know is that it's all about people and the connections they can make in the community, in the schools, just by finding ways to get involved. And I think that ability to connect with a young person, it's just, we see it every day, but it never gets old. It's something we never take for granted. For us, it's a privilege because we get to see and make those connections happen. All right, that's it. So, this is our 40th anniversary, so we welcome anyone to get involved in any way you can. So come see any of us or check out our website for details about programs. Awesome. So thank you very much.
Tracy. Okay, we will move into public comment. Public comment may be made on routine matters not on the agenda this evening. Comments are limited to 2 minutes. Please introduce yourself. Since the matter has not been included on the agenda, the Select Board may not participate in any debate of the topic. It is not appropriate to use the public comment period to comment on a person's reputation, character, physical condition or mental health, disciplinary matters, or civil or criminal charges. Comments about job performance and decisions made are permissible. Anyone here for public comment? Yes. Ms. Dr. Schneider.
Good evening. I just want to give a little bit of an update. We had a very successful discussion on Thursday evening for Precinct 4 residents regarding affordable housing. And I thank those of you who were able to come and listen and maybe in some cases answer some great questions that were posed. I have just wanted to let you know that I did follow up and send an email out to all the other precinct captains as of this morning. I have already been approached by 1 or 2 other precincts that are interested in getting this same kind of discussion going in their precinct. And the Chamber of Commerce, Michael Kasparian, and I intend to help with that anywhere that a precinct wants to have that kind of neighborhood discussion. So stay tuned for more dates that we're holding that. And again, our thanks to those of you who came and gave some great answers to questions that were posed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes, Mr. McConerty.
Good evening, Peter McConerty, Director of Public Works. This is more of an announcement than a comment. Public Works Water Department tomorrow morning will be beginning installing water main on Hayway Road between Old Barnstable Road and moving up towards Mellow Street. We're doing this, and it'll be multi-phase project. We're doing this in 4 phases. We're trying to get a better water quality and pressure in the area between Fresh Pond Well and Hayway Tank. So this will be beginning tomorrow. We put out rave alerts, but I just wanted to make sure everyone did hear about this. Under the report that we put out, it said we had 2 weeks to complete the work, but we're confident we should have it done by the end of the week. And then as the year goes on, we'll be doing more in the spring and in the fall. But it's to get more residences up there connected with service lines, and also to get better pressure in a direct line between Fresh Pond Well and the Hayway Tank.
Great, thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, seeing none. Town Manager's preliminary report. Mr. Johnson-Staub?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we start on your agenda tonight with an appointment to the Beach Committee. We have 2 candidates for 1 seat. Susan DePasquale has withdrawn her interest in that position. And then we come to 2 hearings. I'm told that we're going to take them out of order, so we'll take the Portuguese American Association application to amend their entertainment license first. That's the Navigator at 55 Ashumet Road. The applicant seeks approval for outdoor entertainment. Staff have reviewed the application and raised no concerns. The site is well buffered. The police department reports they have not received any noise complaints related to this property, and this office has not received any complaints. The town manager's office has not received any complaints or concerns related to this application. The next hearing is a continuation of a hearing that began on January 9th, and it was continued again from January 30th. The applicant has submitted a proposal from a contractor describing, so that is for Timber Axe Bar and Bowl at 23 Town Hall Square. And the applicant has submitted a proposal from a contractor describing acoustical panels that could be installed to mitigate the sound leaving the building. We then have the business agenda. There will be an update on the town manager hiring process. I will recuse myself from that discussion, followed by Chief Dunn will be in to provide an update on police department staffing. And regrettably, the news that he will share is not good. There are 10 vacant patrol positions presently, and we anticipate 3 additional positions becoming vacant in the near future. Next on your agenda is a presentation on a funding plan for capital borrowing projects. Finance Director Ed Centeo and I will give a presentation on a funding plan for large capital projects that require borrowing. We will explain how the recently approved projects and the projects proposed for town meeting this April can be accommodated without a tax increase. We will illustrate the extent to which additional projects for future years might be undertaken without a tax increase. The analysis shows there is quite a bit of borrowing capacity available within the next 15 or so years, but we would not be able to undertake all of the projects identified by town departments without securing additional or alternative funding sources. Ed Centeo has prepared what I characterize as a concept plan to illustrate the amount of borrowing we can take on without a tax increase. And I want to emphasize the concept plan is not a proposal. There's a lot more work that needs to be done before we decide how to move forward with the individual capital borrowing projects that have been identified over the next 10 years. So the agenda item is intended as the beginning of an ongoing dialogue to set priorities for future capital projects. That will be followed by Wastewater Superintendent Amy Lowell giving a presentation on 2 wastewater capital projects that are appearing on the April 2023 annual town meeting warrant. Article 24 is supplemental funding for the wastewater treatment facility upgrades approved last April. Town meeting is required to authorize the additional spending. A second ballot vote is likely not required to exempt the borrowing from the limits of Prop 2.5 because the cost increase is not caused by a change in the scope of the project. The Select Board will be required to authorize an application to the Department of Revenue to seek approval to not require a second debt exemption ballot vote. We anticipate the application will be completed in time for the February 27th Select Board meeting. The additional $9.5 million cost fits within the debt drop-off and will not require a tax increase. The second article Ms. Lowell will be presenting on is Article 25, which is for design of a sewer system extension in the T-Ticket-Acapesket sewer area. This $4.5 million can also be accommodated without a tax increase, and in fact, we are not proposing to seek a debt exemption for that borrowing. The next item on your agenda is petition article presentations. The petitioners for each of the 5 petition articles have been invited to give a presentation of no more than 5 minutes. Traditionally, the board defers voting its recommendations on these articles until the following meeting. We will provide the board with draft explanations for the town meeting booklet prior to the February 27th meeting. Next on your agenda is an application for funding for from the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund for an educational video. And that comes from the Affordable Housing Committee, seeking funds to produce an educational video outlining affordable housing issues in our community and to present possible solutions. The video would be used as a tool for the Falmouth Affordable Housing Committee at their summit that's planned for April and other various outlets to promote awareness of the current housing crisis. And I recommend approval of $9,500 for that purpose. And I have drafted a motion for the board's consideration. That is followed by a second application that is directed to the board as the trustees of the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund. This one is for funding to update the town's housing production plan. That plan is required by the Massachusetts Department of Housing and Community Development to be updated every 5 years in order to retain eligibility for relief from the Massachusetts General Law 40B provisions. The plan requirements are extensive and beyond the capacity of staff to prepare without assistance of a consultant. I recommend approval of $30,000 for this purpose. And again, there is a draft motion for the board's consideration. Finally, on the business agenda, I have a discussion of the Sustainability Coordinator job description. As the board is aware, this position is included within the FY 2024 budget. I drafted the job description included in your packet for the Sustainability Coordinator after reviewing similar job descriptions from several other communities. I also sought input from Jennifer Lincoln, our Conservation Administrator, and consultants at the Woods Hole Group. As you will see, the essential functions focus on implementing environmental sustainability and energy efficiency initiatives for municipal facilities and programs. This includes obtaining and administering grants and overseeing renewable energy projects. This purpose is consistent with those outlined in the non-binding petition article approved last year, though it is somewhat more narrow in scope. I have attempted to align the scope and qualifications of the job description with the salary budgeted for the position, which is $94,000. Select board approval of the job description is not required, but I want the board to be familiar with what I am proposing and welcome your input before the job description is finalized. I will also be seeking input from the Energy Committee, which actually has this on their agenda tonight, I believe. And of course, Susan Lumping, our Human Resources Director, will review the job description for format and best practice. That brings us to the consent agenda. There are 4 items on the consent agenda. The owners of 3 Ruth Terrace have an existing fence that encroaches on town property in the road layout. The town engineer has reviewed this request and raised no concerns. Town planner Jed Cornock seeks approval to submit a grant application to retain a consultant to update Falmouth's open space and recreation plan. The plan will consider conservation goals, demographic trends, and incorporate public input to set goals for the future. Additionally, an expired open space and recreation plan makes the town ineligible for important state grants for future preservation of open space and creation of recreational resources. Also in the consent agenda is an amendment to the Select Board naming policy. This policy serves an important purpose to ensure the board follows a deliberate process before assigning a name to a facility that may last in perpetuity. The current policy as written is somewhat cumbersome and places a significant burden on 2 town board members. The existing policy requires a separate hearing held by these two board members. After consulting with the chair, I have suggested a few edits to the policy so the board can hold a hearing at a regular meeting and then make a decision. And lastly, on your consent agenda, I am seeking a second vote on the seasonal wage schedule to clarify the effective date. We would like for the seasonal wage schedule to be adopted effective immediately through the end of the calendar year 2023, and that seasonal pay schedule is labeled as a fiscal year schedule, so that's the clarification to make that change. There are no changes to the rates since the board approved those wage rates last week, or last meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson-Staub. Okay, we'll move to committee interviews. And we have one vacancy, unexpired term ending 6/30/24, and we have two applicants. Are they both here? Gerald? Okay, and Trish Herlihy? Okay, let's start with Gerard, please. If you would come up to the podium.
Okay. It's like a big job interview here.
Now, just tell us a little bit about yourself and your interest in the beach committee, and then give the board an opportunity to ask questions.
Sure. First, I want to thank you for the opportunity. I'm a town meeting member for Precinct 7. Recently retired a year ago this month from Coast Guard. Prior to that, I spent 24 years in the Army. I've been affiliated with Falmouth since 1962. My parents have a home over in North Falmouth. I live in East Falmouth. I brought my children back here when I retired from the Army, so we've been living here ever since. And I just felt after I retired from the Coast Guard, my 19 years of experience in the environmental office, I really felt I could pass on some of my experience from that office. I think the beaches of Falmouth are very important resource, and I feel that if they're not managed properly, or that we could lose those resources quickly. So I just feel that I want to get involved with town events, town politics, and I think it's a good opportunity for me to do that. So if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
No, it's a very impressive resume and very fully filled out. Thank you.
Okay.
Any questions, other questions, comments? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And I'd like to ask Trish Herlihy to come up to the podium, please.
Oh, I do have one question, I'm sorry. Would you be year-round available to participate in a beach committee meeting?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The only time I'm not going to be here is this coming March. We're going to take a small trip.
Okay.
Otherwise, we're here.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good evening. Gerard, I just want to thank you for your service, and I also want to thank the Select Board for your service. Some of you I know have given service in different aspects of the town, and I really value the people in this community who step up to the plate and work to make the community better. So I am here tonight because I'm addicted to salt water in every form. I like to be in it, on it, around it, every day if possible. I started out in 1978, talked into coming down as a lifeguard in college, and I never left. I did go back to college, but I am committed to this community, and I have to say in the 40 years since I came here, I'm devastated by what I see as the loss of our beaches. Every single one of them has changed dramatically. I served for 6 years on the beach committee in various roles, and I visit the beaches every week, and I purposely go to all 10 of them, and I'm shocked by what I see. And I'm devastated because I just became a grandparent, and of course, I want to bring my grandchildren here and let them experience the same joys and educational experiences in the sense of community on the Falmouth beaches where some of our most sacred family memories took place. So I first met Dr. Schneider when I was a lifeguard, and she marched herself and her 2 children down to the Minot Beach lifeguard stand and went like this, the lifeguard saying, "You're late. Swimming lessons start at 9, and I have tennis lessons at 10, and we've got to get this show on the road." So she was a force to be reckoned with then. She turned the Minot Beach group into a full-blown community. We had beach parties and beach contests, and although lifeguards are, in those back in the day, in the 80s, everyone was mostly college age. You could get a room for $15 a week, shared bathroom. Housing was not an issue, and we know it's the complete opposite today. So I got a lesson in what it's like to be a woman of action from Barb Schneider, and we became very, very good friends, and she and I talk about the beaches, and she actually encouraged me to come to a beach committee meeting, and that's when I really saw the difference between the beach committee work of today as compared to back in the 80s, and even meetings in the 90s, where the biggest problem we had was, do we close the lots at night? Do we lock them up? Do we raise the lifeguard salary? That was the emphasis. And now we're talking about mobile units everywhere, and what are we going to do when there is no more beach? So I'm committed to working. I live here year-round, and am available to make the meetings. So, any other questions?
Any questions from the board? Questions or comments?
I don't. I attend the beach committee meetings, and I've seen Ms. Hurley attending at the meetings. So I think she's pretty experienced with the beach committee.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Zelinski?
Mrs. Hurley, do you feel like that with your past experience with lifeguards and that culture and that draw to that would help us in our hiring? That understanding
sure.
and help to make that connection with people coming in and.
Yes, definitely. I think the beach committee has done an excellent job of thinking outside the box. But my full-time job is my work at the Falmouth Housing Authority. So part of the problem is what I see every day and have seen for the last 9 years, that we have such a housing crisis, and that really is a problem for hiring in just about every job here on the Cape. So we all have to get super creative, and but I also think I would work really hard to work on ideas of how we get quality staff and how we keep them.
We'd like to make this an attractive job again.
Yes.
People
it
used
is.
to fight over wanting to be lifeguards, and we need to get
long,
back to that.
Long waiting lists. Yes, I remember.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions or comments or nominations?
Same question. Would you be available year-round for this position?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair, you looking for nominations? I would certainly make the nomination to an unexpired term for Ms. Hurley for the term ending 6/30/2024.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none?
Sorry,
Go ahead.
So I just want to make it clear that even if someone is not on the committee, they're still welcome to attend the committee meetings and still have input into the meetings, even if they're not an active voting member.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
Welcome
you very
aboard.
much.
Thank you, Trish.
Thank you, Mr. Cogliano, as well,
Yes, indeed.
for your interest, and I hope you won't be deterred and go for another committee.
Indeed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we will move into our public hearings, and as you heard Mr. Johnson-Staub announce, I'm going to flip the order. And so we will start with an application by the Portuguese American Association of Falmouth, Inc.
Notice is hereby given under Chapter 140, Section 183A of the General Laws as amended by Chapter 299 of the Acts of 1926 and amendments thereto, that the Portuguese American Association of Falmouth, Inc. has applied to amend its entertainment license and Sunday entertainment license to be exercised at 55 Ashumet Road, East Falmouth, MA. A hearing will be held in the Select Board Meeting Room, Falmouth Town Hall, on Monday, February 13th, 2023, at 6:45 p.m. on the above application. Per order of Select Board, publication date Friday, February 3rd, 2023, Falmouth Enterprise.
Okay, is the applicant here? Okay, Mr. Duarte, we have about 5 minutes for your approval of your application. What would you like to say?
Bless you.
Thank you guys so much for having me tonight. My name is Mike Duarte. I'm the president of the Portuguese American Association of Falmouth. I'm here to correct something that historically we've had before, from my understanding, but just to kind of make things, something went wrong by the wayside, maybe during the change of officers or through COVID, but we've always, in the past, had a outdoor entertainment license, because we do a lot of cultural events and like the Day of Portugal and stuff like that you guys have attended to and stuff like that. So we just want to be able to continue that, and that's why I'm here today to try to fix this.
Any questions from the board? You have
No,
the
I-
application in your packet, Mr. Brown?
I don't have a question, but I did speak in the past with Joe Martino, who really has historically been under the impression that this was already approved as part of a full alcohol license rather than a club license. So I just wanted to share that comment that I had received in the past. I think that's where the misunderstanding came from. They always thought that they had a full liquor license with the entertainment.
I'm sorry, that's the first I've heard of that.
Okay.
I'm not familiar with it.
Questions, comments from the board? Public comment on this application? Okay, if there, do you have a comment? Nope. Okay, if there are no public comments, I would entertain a motion to close the hearing.
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Concerns, questions, comments from the board?
I think this is just continuing what they've always done, and it's never been a problem, so.
Is that a motion, Mr. Brown?
Yes.
I'll second Mr. Brown's motion, Madam Chair.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve an application by the Portuguese American Association of Falmouth, Inc. to amend its entertainment license and Sunday entertainment license to be exercised at 55 Ashumet Road, East Falmouth. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Duarte.
Thank you.
Okay, our second public hearing is the entertainment license, Town Hall Partners LLC, doing business as Timber Axe Bar and Bowl, 23 Town Hall Square.
Notice is hereby given, oh, I'm sorry.
So I was going to say I'm going to recuse myself from this
Yes, thank you,
family
Mr.
member that
Brown.
works there. So.
Notice is hereby given under Chapter 140, Section 183A of the General Laws as amended by Chapter 299 of the Acts of 1926 and amendments thereto, that Town Hall Partners LLC, doing business as Timber, has applied for an entertainment license to be exercised at 23 Town Hall Square, Falmouth, MA. A hearing will be held in the Select Board Meeting Room, Falmouth Town Hall, on Monday, January 9th, 2023, at 6:45 p.m. on the above application. Per order of Select Board, publication date Friday, December 30th, 2022, Falmouth Enterprise.
Welcome, Attorney Clower.
Good
You
evening.
have 10 minutes.
I hope not to take it. Good evening, Kevin Clower for the record. I am here with Mike Mueller, one of the owners of Timber. We have requested an entertainment license, as you well know. At the prior hearing, it was suggested that we have the signed proposal from the sound mitigation technician, which we have submitted to the board last week. Other than that, I think we've covered most of the ground that I think we need to cover. So I think that was the last outstanding item that the board was looking for. So I'd be happy to address any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the board? You have the plan in your packets for soundproofing.
Just a comment.
Mr. Patterson?
I have experience of soundproofing a computer room that ran a very loud fan enough you worked in that room when we had to because it was a secure area. And the noise was so loud that it was a constant din. You'd get a headache after an hour and have to leave the room for a while. Well, we actually did soundproof that room, but what happened is we had to actually put sound absorbing material on all of the walls, so they were completely surrounded. Reverberation is a huge factor in that it bounces off the walls and goes rattling around through the room. And so until you attenuate a lot of that reverberation, I'm not sure you're going to get a significant change. So I would see this as a conditional proposal, because I think you may very well have to add a lot more sound absorbing material around the reflecting walls and floor. You wouldn't do that to the floor, but you just need more sound absorbing material in order to be able to cut down significantly on the reverberation of sound that takes place in a room like that. So I have some serious doubts about whether this is actually going to work.
So when we spoke with the technician, it was determined that because where the bowling lanes are so cavernous there, that keeping the sound from getting to that point by using those acoustical panels, pushing the sound forward towards the bar where you don't have that same reverberation would be an effective means of addressing some of this noise.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Zelinski?
Attorney Clow, would you be opposed to a modified time frame for a probationary license to see how this goes, and then come back with your success story after the fact?
Sure. So I think the entertainment licenses are on a yearly basis. Would be we're now in February. I think the renewals are due in November. So we'd have to be submitting for a new annual license in November. I think that might be an appropriate time frame for us to see how this goes.
Is that what you're asking for, Mr.
No,
Zelinski?
no, not at all. I'm asking for something quite a bit shorter than that to give this a test period, a modified license issued by this board for, say, 3 months, 90 days to see, and then come back and have a discussion and see if what we're proposing works or what you're proposing works, and get some input from and that's just purely a thought of mine. But if it doesn't work, a year's a long time to come back and rehash this. If it works, we'll know immediately within that period. I just don't know how to structure that.
And would that help to address the concerns of Mr. Patterson?
Yes,
That would be a question for Mr.
Yeah.
Patterson.
I just want to see, like I said, I have serious doubts, having been through a project like this. Literally, as the acoustic absorbing material was being put on the walls, you could hear the sound levels dropping. But it had to go all the way around the room, at least 50%, before there was a significant change in the reverberation in that room. So I'm just saying, I'm questioning whether this is going to be a solution that's going to help the neighbors not have to endure the kind of din of noise that they have been experiencing. And so I would like to see a kind of a trial run, and if it works, great, everybody wins. But I agree with you that giving it a year-long license without some kind of a period when they can be back, when they can come back and review it and then extend it at that point makes the most sense.
So part of the issue is that this is going to be a considerable investment. These are not cheap.
I know that.
So
Kevin, if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter anyway. If you spend the money and it doesn't work,
understood, but
then you're going to be up against it.
But we've relied on the advice of professionals, which is what this board asked us to do, to find ways to mitigate the noise. We've got a proposal from the technician who, in his professional opinion, has stated that this should make a significant improvement to the noise, and it is a significant financial cost that they're willing to undertake. But for that, to ask them to undertake that for only a 3-month period.
Do you have a number right now? Do you have a number, what the significant cost is?
Yeah, it's around $1,000 per pound.
And what's the overall cost?
I have to put in 6 of them, I believe. 1, 2.
What do you think the revenue was while you were operating that without an entertainment license?
We're a new restaurant within our first year of business.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just trying to help you through this
so
because
many of
there's
the-
opposing
many of the
sides
nights-
to this.
Many of the nights that we had entertainment, we're still building our customer base. So
I understand.
many of those nights we lost money.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other comments from the board? I'll open it up to public comment. Yes, sir? You need to come up to the podium, please, and introduce yourself.
Dennis DiTullio, Precinct 8. I was just wondering, Scott, what do you mean by, what hoops would have to be jumped through for this to pass? You said testing, right? Is the testing the complaints, or is the testing decibel levels, from what level?
I would
how
say
are
a
you gonna make this-
conglomeration of all. What-
How are you going to make the judgment? That's my question.
Will you may be able to add to what is being proposed if you have a level of opposition going forward? You can make adjustments to that, soundproofing-wise. They have a proposal with a certain amount of soundproofing. Then it would be up to the applicant to come back if there were more complaints or it didn't work, to be able to adjust that.
If it didn't work, how do you determine if it didn't work, is my question.
If you still have the same complaints and it's being tested in both ways. You test it before?
It's complaints from the...
Sir,
Well, this is certainly
you need to be at the
complaint-driven.
podium if you're going to speak to the board, please.
So it's the complaints that will determine whether it goes through or not? That's maybe the science behind how much noise is going outside.
I'm sorry, what's your name again?
Dennis DiTullio.
Mr. DiTullio, what we're trying to do is satisfy both parties. If there were no egregious parties in this, we wouldn't be having this conversation. If everybody was all on board with whatever the noise was, we wouldn't, Mr. Patterson wouldn't have his concerns, I wouldn't have mine.
So it's not going to be
Butters
based on...
have rights as well.
So it's not going to be based on the science of how many decibels are penetrating beyond a certain...
Well, if it eliminates the noise, yes, sir, it is. But that's information I'd like to know in 3 months instead of a year.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Patterson?
I was just wondering what testing...
Yeah, Mr. DiTullio's got a good point. You need an objective basis. You
Yes,
can't,
that's-
well, what's irritating one person is not necessarily anything to another person. So, and we've been through this on wind turbines. So, I mean, I think a method of objectively measuring the level is an important factor, and I appreciate your comment.
Okay. The reason why I'm bringing this up is my daughter is a partier, and she soundproofed her basement, and it worked. Maybe it didn't work. Maybe you didn't have the right technician. I don't know. But
Oh, no, I'm not saying it didn't work in the case that I was part of. It did
I got
work.
the impression you did.
No, it did work. It just required covering a lot of the material, a lot of the wall area inside of that facility before it actually got down to a level where it was quite pleasant. It
So
was
what was
humming.
the final test? You didn't get a headache anymore?
No. Well, it was a work environment. We really didn't have much choice. You know, we had to go in and get our jobs done. But I can just tell you that after they covered all of the walls with a very thick sound-absorbing material, and it was ceiling to floor, it's a question of area. You've got to get rid of the area that's reflecting the sound and bouncing it back around and superimposing on top. It's when it overlaps that it becomes really high in intensity. And so what you need to do is absorb it in as many reflecting surfaces as possible, and then you'll get it down to a level where it's not irritating. And so, it was significantly different. I mean, you would get a headache if you were in there before, and when you'd walk in before, it was like a quiet hum.
Yeah.
And no problem at all.
So if it's done right, it works.
If it's done right, it can work. I can test for that.
Thank you. Yes, please, come in. Mm-hmm.
So, good evening, members of the board, Madam Chair, Mr. Johnson Staub. My name is Linda Samortis, 137 Main Street. We're the closest abutters to Timber. So I'm here solo tonight. My neighbors next door are away on business, as Richie Mehta is as well. So if you bear with me. So what I'm going to do, Richie from 137, my Richie, submitted an email to the board. And hopefully you've all had a chance to see it with a photograph as well, just
Yes,
showing how
we
close
have.
we are. I'm just going to read it, just to reiterate, and for everyone to hear, if you don't mind.
It's quite long. Could
I
we hear
can-
from you, since we have?
It is me, it is me.
We have his
He and I,
email.
we are the same.
Okay, we do have his email.
We are the same.
Why don't you highlight a few important
Highlight
parts? Yep.
that the building is old, doesn't have the proper insulation. I hope the soundproofing works. I am there at night. Other abutters are not. I am there at night. I'm glad they're making an effort. You know, I do applaud them for that. We're 9 months into this, you know, so, yeah, they gained revenue, they lost revenue. I cringed, they're cringe. We just need to kind of settle this, you know. I think the 3-month thing is much better than November. If I have to go through another summer the way that it was, I'm going to go back to something Mr. Patterson said when Shiverick's entertainment license was granted to our lovely Elia, that amplification of music should not be heard beyond walls of your establishment, and that's what this is all about. So you know how I feel about all this. I just, it's like beating a dead horse. I'm happy they're working at it. I am, my bedroom, powder room, just directly behind where the bowling is, you know, which I heard for many years through Ryan, which was fabulous. But now it's a bar, it's a club, it's a karaoke. There might be 3 to 5 musicians coming on and amplified. That's loud. That's loud. The 1 o'clock was crazy. I don't know how that got passed. 11 o'clock could be considered. I did mention that. Ms. Price asked me what I thought was reasonable at one time. You know, with soundproofing, that I'm not hearing it, 11 o'clock. Yeah, I get that. So that's all I'm going to say. You know, I wish Rich was here or Meg and Dave, but they're away on business. So you all know me. You know what I'm about.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
Any other public comment? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
Madam Chair, if I may, real
Oh,
quick.
yes, please.
So I just want to point out, what has been requested is a license until 11, on a pretty limited basis. You know, if, our preference would obviously be to have the board not shorten the time frame. However, if the board was inclined to do so, 3 months is going to be difficult, because by the time we order the panels, we're not going to have anyone in until the panels have been received. And then schedule a musician, it's probably going to be a month and a half to 2 months. So in terms of sample size, I don't think that's going to provide the board with a lot of information. If we could at least have a 6-month period, I think that would make much more sense, but our preference would, of course, be that this isn't a renewal, would be coming back to this board in November requesting a renewal. We are, you know, there is a financial outlay involved in this. I don't know what the difference in revenue between a night with entertainment and without is. So, you know, it's hard to say when that becomes a more viable option, but I think it's, you know, we're not, I think the scope of what's being requested has been reduced and limited in a pretty meaningful way. So, you know, the applicant has taken a lot of efforts to address this, and will continue to do so, because they have a vested interest in being a good member of the community. And I think that this is a reasonable request.
Thank you, Mr. Clower. I'll take a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Conversation amongst the board?
I could certainly live with the 6-month time period that Mr. Clower proposed, given the circumstances he described.
I have no problem with that either, but I would put the responsibility back on the applicants here, because they will know when this goes in whether in fact they're doing a significant job of reducing the reverberation sound both inside and outside that building. And they need to be proactive and just go ahead and invest enough in putting up enough of those sound reducing panels. They work, but you got to cover a lot of area. You can't have reflecting surfaces that don't have this material covering it, or it's just not going to attenuate the reverberation and therefore the propagation of that sound outside of the building.
I just want
Ms.
to
Scott-Price?
make a comment that I do appreciate what the applicant has put in to make this work. I appreciate being a good neighbor.
Would someone like to make a motion?
I'd make a motion to approve for 6 months.
A second.
Okay, with the report, two things I heard. One is it's incumbent upon the applicant to make sure that they have enough of the soundproofing, correct, Mr. Patterson?
Sound absorbing really is what it is.
Okay. And we will do this for 6 months, and it's incumbent upon the applicant to come back in front of us in 6 months. Okay, I have a motion.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
Thank you.
Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, now we will start our business portion of our agenda. Update on the town manager hiring process. Mr. Johnson-Straub, would you tell Mr. Brown he can come back?
I certainly will.
Thank you. Okay. And we should have our consultant, Rick White, here.
He's coming in.
Okay, great. And Rick? Hi, how are you? And there's Mr. Schwagel, right on time. You're up.
Well, you're on time. Well, let me try to make this quick, because I know you have a schedule. But good evening, and thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to give you this update.
Just introduce yourself.
My name is Richard White.
Thank you.
And I am a principal of Grew White Consulting, operating out of Lexington, Massachusetts. And we began this job in mid-December, but we made a conscious decision to avoid competing with the demands and chaos of the holiday season, so we didn't put out any advertisements until January 10th, in which we put notifications in the Cape Cod Times, the local newspaper, the Massachusetts Municipal Association job website, as well as the International City County Managers Association job website. Solicitations were also sent to hundreds of potential applicants throughout New England and the country, and the brochure is posted on your website and ours as well. I personally have contacted at least 75 managers trying to network and come up with a pool of applicants for you. You've gifted me with a talented, focused, and determined search committee. Keith Schwagel and some members are here, the chair. Members include Catherine Bumpus, Dave Garrison, Frank Duffy, and Natalie Nevarez. We've already had 2 meetings, February 4th and 10th, and we'll be meeting soon Wednesday morning, and more frequently after that. We've been advertising and soliciting for about a month, and I think I've exhausted completely the available applicants. Although we tell applicants that we're going to fine-tune the process and start interviews around the end of February, we never put a deadline in there. My own personal experience is that one of my great mentors, a fellow who was the manager in Concord, left a select board's meeting one night after 20 years of being a manager and said, "I've seen it all. I've seen it too many times. I need to get out of here." And he sent out a resume to Janesville, Wisconsin, and he was the manager there for another 20 years there about a month and a half later. So I try very hard never to put a hard date on there in case we get some manager who's suddenly realized when their time is up and when they need to move on. This is a very ephemeral business, and good managers put all of their heart and effort into a job, and sometimes it takes an event to cause them to determine that they need a change of scenery. To date, we've had 34 cover letters and resumes received with interest in the position. 15 of the 34 are or have been chief executive officers in other communities. We have one assistant chief executive officer who applied, 7 senior level municipal government department heads, 1 select board member, not from this community, and the remaining candidates either connected directly or indirectly to local government. In today's pool, 34 is a pretty good response. I'm pretty pleased with the number of active chief executive officers who are interested in the position. 20 of the 34 applicants are from Massachusetts, 24 are from New England, the remaining are from Arizona, Nevada, Florida, Georgia, New York, Tennessee, and New Mexico. Of the 10 from outside of New England, 4 have New England connection. They worked here, they have family here, they want to come back here. We are going to be starting confidential interviews soon, and I expect a public process where the selection committee can present to the board 3 to 4 finalists sometime by mid-March, but at least in the month of March. This is pretty aggressive. The screening committee is very thorough. It is a diverse group of people with a varied amount of skills that will do you very well. And you're very lucky to have them, and I really appreciate their insights. We may interview 8 or more and narrow the field or add to the field, depending upon what we see, and have a short list interviewed for a second interview. That's why I'm hedging my bets and saying mid-March, ish, for the public process. But everything's going very well, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have. And if Keith wants to add anything, I'm happy to have him do that.
Questions from the board? Could you just speak a little bit to the outreach that you've done to the community in terms of the phone calls that you've made? You've been gathering data about what people are looking for and what, in terms of personal characteristics for this.
Sure. I spent most of the month of December reaching out first to key department heads. Probably talked to about 18 to 20 department heads. And from that, I probably spent anywhere, depending upon the department head, 25 minutes to 45 minutes with them, just getting their feedback. I try very hard not to position the people I interview. I explain to them what I'm doing, what I'm looking for, and then just leave an open-ended question and have them go. Once I get enough information, then I'll start probing and asking questions. But it's always on the interviewee's terms, not mine. From there, I asked all of you to recommend up to 5 people to interview as community leaders. If you look at Falmouth, there are spheres of influence in terms of who affects policy and what we do and how we do it. And the inner sphere is the professionals that work in government, and you, and all the elected and appointed committees. And then an outer sphere is the people who are active in the community, are either activists or participate in town meeting or at these meetings. And you gave me a list of 25 people that I did the same exercise with. From there, I took the results of what I garnered from each of those separate groups, and I sat down with each of you individually, using that as the platform for our discussions, and I did the same thing with you. So in the end, I have 3 different perspectives in terms of what you're looking for in candidates. All of them have similar themes and trends, that nothing contradicts the feedback that I've gotten. They all just come at it from a different perspective because they're different people and they play a different role in Falmouth. And for a candidate, that's a very rich stream. And it's, for me as a recruiter, in screening the candidates, it's a very rich stream for me to have conversations with people.
And you've also received notes from the public meeting that we had.
I did, yes.
And we have a comment site set up on our website, and we have collated those comments and sent them to you as well. One piece I do want to clarify, because I've been asked about this, is how the screening committee was chosen. And you and I had spoken, and we thought 5 was a good number. And we did have a few people from the community write to us requesting to be on the screening committee. I made sure that every select board member had those names, and select board members put forth one name, and we voted that slate. And I think you do have a really good committee.
I'm very pleased.
Very strong screening committee. Any questions from the board or comments?
Curious about, will we, as a board, only see the final few candidates?
No. Right now, this screening committee has a complete package of everybody who's applied. As part of our service to you, you'll get the final recommendations, but you'll also get a full packet of everybody who's applied.
Okay.
And that's for your files.
Thank you.
Everybody who's applied who isn't a finalist has an aura of confidentiality. They applied with the understanding if we didn't ask them permission to make their name public and they weren't a finalist, then we wouldn't release their names.
Okay.
We don't want to jeopardize anybody's work environment.
Certainly. Ms. Scott-Price?
In the off chance that we look at all of the other applicants and we're interested in interviewing someone, or I'll just say, if I'm interested in interviewing someone who is not on essentially the short list, what would be the process of asking that person for an interview?
You all vote, and I serve you, and they'll be there. It's not I'm here to serve you. I mean, you essentially have me as a resource. And, I did the job for 40 years, and I've been recruiting for quite a while. That has a certain value, but it's not you. It's not Falmouth, and it's not the community. You may disagree, and you may find someone on the list that you want to interview, and that's your right, and you should.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes. Mr. Zelinski? Sure.
Mr. White, thank you for what you're doing. Did you find, I have just a short question, did you find that, what would you say were people being candid, do you think, I mean, you do this obviously for a living, what was your impression about people being candid with you when you talk to department heads and town leaders? I mean, I'm sure you heard quite a bit.
I did. I think people were very straightforward and honest. I think when you approach the interview in a familiar way and you don't try to lead people and you let them give you what they have and only ask for elaboration or enunciation, you eventually get everything that they have. And the level of feedback that I got and the richness of it leads me to believe that I don't think anybody was holding back a bit.
Good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Okay. Anything else that you want to share or anything else from the board? It's an incredibly important process. We need to get it right. We need to do this really well. And so thank you for your part in helping us do that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
And thank you to the screening committee members who are here and willing to do this for us. Okay, we're going to move on to police department staffing update. Chief Dunn, we hear it's not good news.
Town manager just outside?
No, he's, I think down the hallway, he was
I'll
not standing
text
outside,
him.
so if you want to wait.
Yeah, just give him 1 minute.
Sure.
I'll text him. But I don't know that we need to hold you up too much, Chief Dunn, because I think you have also talked to him about
I've had
this as well.
conversations in great lengths with him, yes.
So nothing you say is going to be a surprise to him.
Thank you. Again, Ed Dunn, Police Chief. Thought it was important, especially going into the summer months, that you and the community are aware of our staffing issues. Everything going on in the country today, it's not just policing, it's everything. It's tough finding employees. We're still trying to get out of civil service, which isn't helping. But anyways, to give you some real numbers, as you're aware, we are budgeted for 65 people. And that is 1 chief, 2 captains, 4 lieutenants, 6 sergeants, and it should be 52 police officers. That brings us to a total of 65. Currently, right now, you have 1 chief, 2 captains, 4 lieutenants, 6 sergeants, and 33 patrolmen. I have 1 in the academy. We had 2 in the academy, but as of last week, we had to remove 1 and terminate him for information that was developed while he was in the academy. We have 4 officers, line of duty injuries. Out of those 4, 3 are in the process of probably retiring on a medical. 1 just recently went out on the line of duty. We're hoping to get him back at some point. It's going to depend on how he heals. I have 3 active military right now. 1 just left the other day, and he's gone till 2024. I have another one who's gone to 9 of 2023, and a third one who's gone to 2 of 24. We also have an officer who went out on family medical. It was an injury, but not related to the job. He's doing well. He had surgery, and he's recouping, so we're really happy to hear that. Some other things that are happening, which is going to make it even worse. We just had a retirement on last Thursday, so that brought our numbers down. We're expecting another retirement on 3/16 of 23. We have an officer on the 17th. He's one of our new ones, just recently graduated from the last class, finished his FTO program, has been out, and he came and saw me the other day and said, "This job is not for me," and he's resigning as of the 17th. He is going to, apparently he's going to go work for the fire department somewhere off Cape. I have another officer who loves working here in Falmouth, but has family on the island and is looking for a job on the island and will probably go to the island sometime the end of the month. So there's another one that's going to be going. And I have another new candidate who just finished FTO, and because of personal reasons, wants to lateral to the city of Boston. Boston PD hasn't taken laterals since 2007, but Boston PD is in the same problem as every other police department. And the commissioner sent all Mass chiefs a letter stating, "I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to start asking for laterals." So this particular officer is leaving probably within the next week or so. So that's going to bring our numbers, 3 more, they're going to down. So our numbers going into the summer, I think last year we were at 44 capable working, that's sergeants, lieutenants, and patrol. If we continue on this road, we will be down to somewhere around 40 to 41 officers if nobody else gets hurt. I want to assure you, and I want to assure the community, I've spoken with our partners in Bourne, Chief in Bourne and the Chief in Mashpee. Should we need any mutual aid assistance, of course, same as we would do to them, they will be here to assist us in any way they can assist us as we go forward on a nightly, daily shift. Kind of glum, sorry to
Questions
say.
from the board?
Anything we can do to help? Is there maybe a signing bonus we could authorize, or I'm not sure what we could do.
It's an industry right now. I mean, with everything going on in law enforcement, it's not a job people want. It is a good job. It's a respectable job. I've done it for 43 years and enjoyed every minute of it. Still do. And the men and women in the police department, or any police department that works, do a great job. Civil service is a big thing. Just so you have an understanding on that, I mean, I can't blame everything on civil service, but I can. The last hire we had, we called for a list of 5 names. We got 112 names off the civil service list. Out of the 112 names, 7 people came in and signed. Out of the 7 that came in and signed, 1 had a felony, so we weren't going to hire him. 1 hasn't had a driver's license in 5 years. We're not hiring them. And the others were just shopping. They weren't Falmouth. This was a state list. When we asked for the 5, we were looking for the Falmouth residence list, and we were automatically on the state list. The others took jobs elsewhere, and we were able to give 1 job offer. So there is another one out there that we gave a job offer to. He's still in the process. We don't have a seat for him anywhere yet because we did the psychological, waiting for a physical. Once the physical is done, he'll do the physical agility, and then we got to find an academy somewhere in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So that person won't be ready for another year. I still talk with some other people, officers in the Commonwealth, willing to come to Falmouth when and if we get out of civil service. So we may, as I had a talk with Peter today about that, we may be able to, it's called poaching, poach from other departments, if we can get out of civil service. And we just put a Band-Aid on it for now. There is a new civil service list coming up in April. But again, it depends on what happens at town meeting with that article as far as rescinding that vote. And I know we're going to refile with the legislator on the legislative exit. But yeah, so that's where we are with it. Sorry, I don't have better news.
I got one more question.
Mr. Brown?
Chief, have you thought about how the hiring process would go if we get out of civil service? I'm
Yes,
sure you have.
we've negotiated with the unions and things like that. We can do it a couple different ways. You can have an exam, but a lot of departments are just putting job offers out there and accepting applications. And then that process goes through the background check, interviews with a panel. You know, then you still have to do your psychological, your physical agility and things like that to get them into an academy. So it depends on, it's a mix on how it's done. Then there are departments that are there are contractors out there that will come to Falmouth and give an exam. The piece with that is if you're coming to Falmouth to take an exam, that means you want to work in Falmouth. And that's kind of what these other communities do. I know Mashpee had an exam, I think last year, I don't remember the numbers, and they're smaller too because just the amount of people wanted to do the job now. But those people wanted to work in Mashpee because that's why they went and took the exam. So that would be the piece. Or if we just put out a posting that we're accepting applicants, and you can fill out an applicant and just do our due diligence in the background checks.
Okay, thanks.
Question?
Yes.
What is the timeline for when someone applies when they're, as we would say, like the fire department, shift strength ready? What is that timeline?
To get somebody from the date we start the background and everything else, it's about a year.
Okay.
And some of that delay is, again, I'll blame civil service. It's a timeline with them jumping through the hoops with civil service. Seems like our non-civil service departments can move a little bit faster, but it's usually about a year. By the time you get the background done, the academy's 24 weeks. They come out of an academy, it's another 15 weeks. So that, is the FTO program, the 15 weeks, and then get them going. We seem to have a lot of delays jumping through hoops with civil service.
So really the only way to fill the position sooner would be lateral movement?
Right now, to fill a position, yes. We actually have an individual that is working for us as he worked as a community service representative last year for us because he did not take the civil service exam, but he's fully academy trained from the Cape Cod Academy. Nice young man, and he's still with us, doing some things with us within the department. He does plan on taking the civil service exam. If we get out of civil service, we would do the same thing, whether we do an exam or in-house an exam or an application and follow that procedure with him also. But yeah, right now, for a quick Band-Aid fix would be to hire officers similar to what other departments are doing. The Vineyard is taking one of our officers, or a lateral is under civil service.
Mr. Brown?
Our, the idea of having the clinicians work with the police to try to intervene in situations where it's more of a mental health or
collaboration. Right.
Collaboration. Would the fact that we're going to be in shorthanded this year, and we've talked about adding 2 clinicians, would adding more clinicians take some of that?
Two would be great. We did the job description. I know we're moving forward with that process. 2 would be great. I mean, eventually, at some point, we might need a 3rd one, but right now we have none.
Right.
So two we feel is adequate for the moment. The other thing is that I want to make you aware of, as those numbers drop for the street, we need people on the street than other specialty positions. We are removing a detective as of the 15th, putting him back on the road. And I've also had a conversation with Superintendent Dorr about possibly removing the SRO from the school. Really don't want to do that. And I know you know how important that is to have them in the school. But if I don't have officers answering calls, it's no good to have them in a school. So we're looking at all avenues. I mean, that's going to be the last resort, but that's where we are right now.
And just one more comment, just for the public's information, that, it was a year and a half ago, town meeting approved removal from civil service, and there's been no action by the state to approve that. And so now town meeting's going to take up rescinding the original vote from 1936, which got us into civil service. And if we rescind the vote, seems like technically we should be out of civil service. So that's the next move that we're trying.
Well, I'd like to say
Sorry
thank you
to
for your
bring all the doom and gloom.
information, Chief Dunn, but not sure I can, but thank you for coming in. And
Better to know, though, right?
Yeah, we
And
need
that's
to
what
know.
I figure everybody needs to know.
Right.
And I will tell you, we're doing a lot of forced hiring, and the men and women are stepping up, and they're doing a great job under the circumstances, and they will continue to do that, I'm sure.
Appreciate your service.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to funding plan for capital borrowing projects, and I'm going to hold you to your 10 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Peter Johnson-Staub, Interim Town Manager, and with me is Ed Centeo, Finance Director. The impetus of this analysis and presentation was really that we received an unpleasant surprise when the cost of the water treatment facility upgrades escalated significantly over the past year. And the town has done an excellent job of thoughtfully planning and timing capital projects and managing the debt service borrowing so that we are able to avoid a tax increase when we go to the voters and request capital funding, specifically borrowing authorizations. So we needed to take a hard look at our debt plan to see if we could accommodate that additional cost without a tax increase, and that precipitated really a fuller analysis looking 10 years into the future at all of the projects that we're contemplating to see how these pieces are fitting together. So as I mentioned earlier, tonight's presentation is really the beginning of a conversation. We have worked up what I'm referring to as a concept capital plan, and the outcome of this is going to be further study and further evaluation as we consider future capital projects. But I'll begin with, I know I've mentioned it before, but I think it bears repeating. We have 2 capital articles on the town meeting warrant for April, and we are able to accommodate both of those projects without a tax increase. So with that important news out of the way, the focus of the presentation is not the smaller items, and some of these smaller items are actually pretty big these days. We, as you know, every November we appropriate funds for a variety of capital needs, and those are funded from free cash and other sources without borrowing. The focus for tonight's presentation is on those larger projects that do require borrowing, and roughly we're talking about over $2 million for projects that require borrowing. So for tonight, we're going to identify projects that have been proposed and potential projects that are on our horizon, our planning horizon. We're going to look at what projects could possibly be financed without a tax increase and which projects might require financing from other sources. So the capital needs that have been identified by the staff, by the department heads, first, the big gorilla in the room is wastewater. There are multiple projects to implement the comprehensive wastewater management plan that has long been under development and has been implemented in phases. And as the board is aware, there are regulations proposed by the Department of Environmental Protection that would require us to rapidly accelerate those plans. What we've looked at in this concept plan is not the accelerated plan under the new regulations. We're just looking at what has been contemplated under the existing situation.
Mr. Patterson?
Does your wastewater management project actually include any of the surface water runoff, so-called stormwater runoff and ponds?
It does not.
So this is not looking at fertilizer damage to our estuaries or any of those kinds of things when you talk about wastewater. Okay, that's just the,
yeah,
I
so
wanted to know the scope.
Right, so the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan and the Water Quality Management Committee have looked at when do we think we're going to be going to the voters for large borrowing projects for sewers, and that's all that's included here. The Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan does look at that full universe, but that's not in this borrowing plan. So going through the list of other capital needs, the Hatchville Fire Station, already approved, is in this borrowing plan. School roofs, as I think the board is aware, the school department is requesting design funds for 3 roofs that are being requested. The design money is being requested at this upcoming town meeting, and we don't really have a solid number for the cost of those roofs, but we've ballparked it at $10 million. We know that we have to make we have to put in place a water main replacement program. The town has been doing some, but it's not enough to really meet the need to replace the aging infrastructure. So we have looked at those borrowing costs. We have identified recreational facilities, pickleball courts, skateball park, both of which design have been approved for those. And then we've looked at beach facilities, a marina bulkhead, main library roof replacement, potential Northwest Fire Station, and broadband. Not to say those are all funded, those are all sort of the known universe of potential capital projects. So the purpose of the following debt plan is to confirm that approved and proposed projects can be funded without a tax increase. The capital projects, as I said before, that have been identified for 2024 those that have been identified for after 2024, beyond those on the upcoming town meeting warrant, are concept level plans only. Further due diligence would be required before we come to the board with a proposal to actually move forward on those at a specific time and with a specific dollar amount. And certainly further community engagement and select board input is required to refine the plan. The debt forecast that we've put together illustrates a rough order of magnitude, how much can be spent without requiring a tax increase. Now I'm going to hand over to Finance Director Ed Centeo.
Good evening. I want to let you know that the Finance Department, in conjunction with folks like Amy Lowell, our financial advisors, Peter Johnson-Staub, Patty O'Connell from the Finance Department, and the rest of the Finance Department have worked together over the last several weeks to put together a model that's a model that allows us to adapt as things change. The things that we would have to adapt to, excuse me, are the fact that some of the projects are in concept stage, so we need harder numbers for actually projecting out the debt. Obviously, as you all know, interest rates are fluctuating in this environment. We have to look at the borrowing terms, whether we're going to have subsidies from the state or federal government. So there are a lot of factors that go into, how we would manage a debt drop-off plan to ensure that we're not increasing taxes for the taxpayers. And what we did was put together a model where you can actually modify those variables in order to project out what could be seen in terms of the debt drop-off. And we'll share that with others, for example, the water quality management folks, so that they can actually project out what they might be seeing as well. So again, we want a tool that we can utilize going forward in this environment. As Peter described, there are projects that have already been approved. The list is on the board: the fire station, the water treatment facility, and we're going to be looking to get some additional funding to meet the design needs, and others that I'm sure you all have been discussing over time. And we can go into more detail after we go through this projection. The other projects that are in concept stage, as we discussed, would be the Woods Hole Force Main. As Peter said, a lot of them are wastewater projects and highly critical for the environment, for the taxpayers, all the way out to some projects that are nameless, but we just wanted to come up with an amount out to 2040 that we could slot in as debt drops off. This chart shows how we're trying to manage the debt drop-off and the eliminating impacts to taxes as it relates to these capital projects. The gray line that's straight across is the amount of debt that we currently have that we want to stick to as we go forward. The orange line is the actual fluctuation in the debt as we go forward, because the debt doesn't drop off neatly. There are some peaks and valleys with that debt. And then at the bottom of the screen is supplemental funding that we have to add throughout the period of the borrowing that we'll be doing in order to reduce the peak periods where a tax rate spike might occur. So that's additional funding that we would inject into the plan. Again, this is variable. If the interest rates either go up or down, then we have to adjust this plan going forward. And so this is an adaptive management or financial management plan as we go through the process. And I'm going to turn it over to Peter, and we're going to go over some of the other items that may not be included in borrowing. We have to come up with some other creative ideas to cover these projects.
Thank you, Ed. So in this concept plan that we've presented, we have included these projects, right? So the Hatchville Fire Station, school roofs, sewer extension for T-Ticket Acapesket Phase 1, and then several more wastewater projects, the Woods Hole Sewer Force Main, Trunk River Force Main, and Lift Station Jones Road Sewer Force Main, T-Ticket Acapesket Sewer Extension Phase 2, the wastewater outfall pipe, and then, as Mr. Centeo mentioned, projects to be determined, 25 million and 20 million. So I want to point out that what's not included in that plan are water main replacements, and I'll just go back. The future projects to be determined, we don't have the ability to fit those in 2024, 25, 26. Those won't begin until 2037. That borrowing capacity doesn't start until 2037. So when we look at how are we going to put in place a water main replacement program, there are other avenues that we can pursue, but we can't simply borrow the money without a tax increase. So that the revenue source that leaps to mind is the water rates, right? I mean, the water, there are almost as many water users, there may be more water users than there are taxpayers. And that is a funding source that we can certainly look at to fund a water main replacement program. And I'll just comment briefly on that. And this will be The board will receive a presentation in April on what the needs are for the water main replacement program. You will hear that we should be investing money every single year, and that will be followed by a water rate study that identifies, okay, if we want the water operation to pay for itself and to pay for its capital, what would the water rates need to be to get there? And then we can look at, pacing the program and potentially other funding sources as well. So other capital needs that are not included in the concept plan, the pickleball courts, the skate park, beach facilities, marina bulkhead, main library, none of those are within this capital plan. As I said, this is a concept plan. The board can certainly look at, well, maybe we don't want to do all of the wastewater plans and have to neglect all of these other needs. There's plenty of time and opportunity to revisit those priorities and change, this concept plan that we've put together. But the bottom line here is that our needs certainly outstrip what could be financed strictly on the tax levy and without a tax increase. And that's pretty much it. As Ed mentioned, there are a number of variables in the forecast. If the interest rates are better than anticipated, that opens up opportunities. If they're worse than anticipated, that closes off opportunities. We've been fairly conservative about our estimates of subsidies that we might receive for wastewater. So if those improve, that could open up some new opportunities. But certainly the point of tonight is just to give you this broad overview, again, reassure you that what's on the town meeting warrant for April is something that we can afford without a tax increase, but that we have a lot of work to do if we're going to try to really achieve all of our capital needs and wishes in the decade or so planning horizon that we've looked at. And that concludes the presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions, comments? Mr. Patterson?
Just a question. Electric vehicle charging stations, it's looking like that's coming along pretty fast. Where's the town going to stand in 10 years? Because they're talking about more than 50% of the vehicles being electric vehicles in another 10 years. And I don't think that's unrealistic, and certainly the car manufacturers are taking it very seriously.
Those two things go hand in hand, right? We're not going to have 50% of our cars be electric if we don't have charging stations. Certainly there are grant opportunities for charging stations. We have one, I believe, that's being put in place that is in conjunction with some funded electric vehicles approved. The funding was approved last November. We haven't included any money for that in this plan. It's certainly something that we can look at if it's a priority. And again, there are some grant opportunities, so there may be some opportunity there. But I guess my initial thought would be that the town's going to have to either get grants or pay for charging stations for municipal vehicles. But in terms of a major capital outlay for charging private vehicles, I don't know. That's a long list of capital needs that we have. I'm not sure where it fits on that list.
Well, and then the other thing is just sourcing the energy, because it's no longer going to come in fuel trucks. It's going to have to come in over the grid. So we're going to need, the infrastructure to support that new form of transportation. So that's not in here. That's all. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson-Staub. Oh, Mr. Brown, do you have a comment?
We also have a very ambitious dredging plan from the Waterways Committee, which is totally not funded, so that might need to be up there, because we're really not maintaining our channels right now.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Scott Price?
The financial model that you all came up with, I'd like to see that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Would be helpful. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for more bad news.
The reality check.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about this right here? He's talking about this money, this thing.
Come up to the podium, please.
Peter, this this money that's been, do we have money set aside for the potential more climate change disasters that are gonna face this area? I mean, every storm is getting worse, and that could be a lot of money. It could be a lot of money, and do we have a fund set aside for disasters? That are gonna be on the increase, by the way.
Yeah. So this concept plan does not have an allocation for coastal resiliency. It's certainly something that the board is aware of, that we've talked about. The town has made some progress in terms of getting some grants and doing some planning around what the first projects might be. Actually, I should qualify that. One of the projects that is in this plan is arguably a coastal resilience plan. It's to relocate the sewer main, the fresh pond.
Trunk River?
The Trunk River sewer main that was one of the projects that was identified here. But certainly, there could be a lot more as a result of climate change and sea level rise that would need to be addressed.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Something I want to address to you, Doug, is that I have an EV, and most EV drivers charge at home. There will be the vacationers, of course, but most EV drivers do charge their cars at home.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Lowell?
Finance Department, I also want to address something too regarding this. There's a potential wind farm coming through here, which we'll be discussing later on. Have you discussed with the people?
Sir, this is beyond the scope.
Well, no, this has to do with finance.
No, we're
so-
going to move on. It's
Okay.
beyond the scope. Water Superintendent Amy Lowell. Wastewater Capital Project updates. You have 20 minutes, and I'm going to need to hold you to that, please.
I'm here to talk this evening about 3 wastewater-related articles that are on the April town meeting warrant. The first is Article 24, which is a supplemental appropriation for wastewater treatment facility improvements. Peter was already talking about this evening, introduced it. I think you called it unfortunate. I'm sorry, it's not what the news anybody wants to bring, but we need to talk about it. So a reminder, the wastewater treatment facility improvements are required to accommodate the T-Ticket Acapesket area flow, as well as new flow from existing sewer areas, while continuing to meet groundwater discharge permit limits for our wastewater treatment plant. $24 million was appropriated for that in last April, and the project since has been designed using ARPA funds. We hired, because everybody's aware that there's been an unusual inflation and unusual circumstances in the past couple of years. We hired an independent cost estimator to look at the cost of the wastewater project before we went to this town meeting. And the new estimate of project costs that was determined by the independent cost estimator is $9.5 million more than was appropriated last April. So that's why I'm here. This is the middle column here is the previous estimate that I provided to the select board in February or so of last year, and the right column is the current estimate for those same items. So the current project cost estimate is $33.5 million. Just a bit of background on what is leading to that cost increase and what contractors are dealing with in the market these days. In the past couple of years, according to the Mass DOT, the price of diesel has gone up 93%, price of gasoline up 51%. Portland cement, of which there's going to be a lot of cement on this project, a lot of concrete on the project, that cost is up 25%. And steel, there is also a lot of steel in this project. That price has been up more than 83%, or has been up 83%. And just a few examples of projects that were bid in the last year that have come in way over their original engineer's pre-bid estimate. The Mashpee wastewater treatment facility, the town of Mashpee is building a new wastewater treatment facility, and they had their bid opening in June of '22, and their low bid was 38% higher than their design estimate, and the Hull and Barnstable wastewater improvements were similarly. The bids came in over the projected estimates. So these are the reasons we went out and requested an independent estimate, was to, we'd rather be asking now for more, for an additional appropriation than after we'd gone out to bid. Department of Revenue review is going to be, we will be requesting the review. As I said, the debt exclusion, or as I mentioned, the debt exclusion for this project passed on the ballot in May of 2022. The owner's project manager for the wastewater treatment facility project is preparing a report for us to send to the Department of Revenue, outlining the cost increase that I just described and the inflationary circumstances of the project. This report will be provided to the Select Board to review and vote to accept. That's a requirement of the Department of Revenue in reviewing this, this project. And the Department of Revenue will review that report and make a determination of whether or not an additional debt exclusion vote is required. We anticipate that an additional ballot vote will not be required, because the scope of the project has not changed. So I wanted to let you know that we'll be coming back with a report for your review, and in order to send it on to the DOR, it needs the select board's signature. But we anticipate that they will allow this to proceed without a second vote, because as you saw in the list, we are not changing the scope of this project. We are just requesting additional funding. We have applied for a state revolving fund loan and received a project approval certificate for that. That's a step in the process for the loan. We anticipate a 0% interest loan for the project, though there are hurdles that we still need to get through to be certain that the entire cost will be covered by a 0% interest loan. If it's not 0% interest, it defaults to a 2% interest loan. We expect a minimum of 3.3% loan forgiveness from the SRF program and up to 25% grant from the Cape Cod and Islands Water Protection Fund. That's it on the wastewater treatment facility cost increase. The second wastewater-related article on this April's town meeting is Article 25, which is a request for design and permitting funding for the first phase of the T-Ticket Acapesket sewer area. The first phase is what's in green on your screen. It's the northeast end of Mara Vista and the T-Ticket Path Peninsula. Phase 2 is Acapesket Peninsula, and that is not covered by this design funding request. That will be the next phase beyond that. So the request in Article 25 is for $4.5 million. That's to design the collection system in that Phase 1 area, as well as the lift station and the force main to get that wastewater up to the wastewater treatment facility, and then the expansion of our existing recharge beds, 14 and 15 at the north end of our wastewater facility site. The design does...
Can I ask a question just on the scope of those projects? Does that include that lift station at Robbins Road for the residential and commercial overlay district?
No, that is not in this project. We can talk about that more in a different meeting.
Thank you. I've been asking for it.
Not prepared for that. Yeah. Okay. Good to know. The design also includes soil borings along the force main route and on the recharge site, a detailed survey that's needed for design, permitting, including updating our groundwater discharge permit for the site to allow additional flow, the financing application for that project, would occur under the $4.5 million, and then the design is, as I already described. The schedule that was in the approved targeted watershed management plan for Great Pond was, again, this design appropriation to be followed by a construction appropriation of approximately $60 million at the April town meeting in 2024, so a year from this April, and then bid a year after that in the spring of 2025, and construction would begin in the summer of 25. The last article that's wastewater related on this coming town meeting is, it says here Article 33, I think that might be wrong, I think it's Article 32. But this is to meet the land use control requirement for the 0% interest loan. As I said, there are a number of hurdles to get a 0% interest loan from the state, and this is one of them. So this is really just a technical update to the language of our land use control bylaw, which we in town call the flow neutral bylaw. And that's that'll be in the warrant, and this is, the changes to the bylaw are on this slide in bold, and they will be in the warrant in bold as well. So I'm glad to talk and answer any questions.
And that is Article 32.
Okay, yeah, that's my mistake. Presentation.
Questions from the board? Mr. Brown?
Question, I don't know if, I think you've already told me that it doesn't belong in the, what was the name of that? Flow neutral bylaw. But how do we build something into our sewer planning area so that when a 40B project comes along and puts six houses on a lot, that they have to pay a similar betterment as an individual house?
So, right, that's not in the flow neutral bylaw, but that is something that we will be talking about as part of our, or related to our water and sewer rate study. They called a sewer impact fee, or there are different names for them in the industry, but that is something we will be looking at, is an additional charge for additional flow within the sewer system.
And I have a question, but it's outside the scope of this, so I don't know if it's appropriate, but how could we create another sewer planning area to accommodate affordable housing if we chose to? I know it's a kind of off-the-cuff question.
So it is a challenge. With right now, there are conflicting needs and conflicting pushes from the state. But the town needs and wants affordable housing, and we are encouraged to meet affordable housing targets. We also want and need to improve water quality in our coastal ponds, and we are being very strongly encouraged by the state to do that. Those two things are something the town is struggling to do together. You increase the affordable housing, it increases the flow, wastewater flow, and that wastewater has to go somewhere. So I don't have a direct answer about that, but it is one of the biggest challenges in town right now, is the intersection of those two issues.
Right, that's a pretty good answer for such a curveball question, so thank you.
Any other comments from the board or questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for asking it.
Yep.
Okay, we're going to move on to the presentation of the petition articles for the April 2023 town meeting. This is an opportunity for the petitioner to present their article to the board, and then the board will take up any debate about the petition articles and will make recommendations on February 27th. So we will start with Article 15, Rosemary Carey, and you have 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Rosemary Carey, Precinct 5. Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the Select Board for hearing my comments tonight regarding Article 15. I have the privilege to speak for co-sponsors Alessandro Bocconcelli, Linda Bowers, co-petitioners, Alessandro Bocconcelli, Linda Bowers, Eleanor Ling, David Mark Welch, Scott Miller, and Matt Patrick, and many others who are at home or who came here in support tonight.
Bless you.
Okay. Our group of petitioners are longtime Falmouth residents. Our group of petitioners are longtime Falmouth residents from various precincts who were disappointed with the decision by this board not to grant permission to a wind company to do soil testing, surveys, and feasibility studies. We came together to submit a petition asking town meeting to vote to reverse that decision and allow access. Tonight, I'll present the reasons why town meeting members should vote yes on Article 15, and ironically, ask this board for your support too. Here is the text of the article in two parts. Forgive me if I speed read it, but it's important for all of us to hear. To see if town meeting will vote in favor of allowing offshore wind developers the right of entry to conduct soil investigations and studies to assess the feasibility of horizontal directional drilling in town-owned parcels. This right of entry to conduct physical investigation agreements will grant offshore wind developers only temporary access to conduct physical investigations and studies. Any offshore wind electric cable landing or on siting of facilities on any other town-owned property must be approved by the Select Board or other town bodies with jurisdiction over such matters. The agreement will allow the town to better assess the feasibility of an interconnection with offshore renewable energy projects that would facilitate the decarbonization of Massachusetts' electric grid and assist the Commonwealth in achieving net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, consistent with state climate law and the climate emergency declared by the town of Falmouth in 2020 at town meeting. Okay, so I support Article 15. First and foremost, this is not an article requesting approval of the entire offshore wind program to make landfill in Falmouth. It merely enables any interested company to explore the feasibility of bringing cables ashore with soil testing. This testing helps determine whether the landing is feasible and environmentally safe. Previous offshore wind projects in our region have shown that any disruption caused by the soil testing is minimal. The work is done manually, not with horizontal directional drilling, and done expeditiously within a matter of weeks with as little disruption to abutters as traffic patterns as possible. The properties undergoing the tests would be restored to the town's standards. There would be no lasting impact on real estate values. If the soil testing is allowed to go forward, our town could forfeit potential economic and environmental benefits to the town before the whole picture is known. Recently, our neighbors in Barnstable entered into agreement allowing landfill at Covell's Beach. The benefit to Barnstable is $16 million, money that they are using to help with their water quality problems, plus applicable commercial taxes that the town levies. South Fork Wind, in another coastal community on Long Island, received a host agreement of $17.5 million. These positive experiences show that interaction with offshore wind developers can be a positive benefit to the community, but we'll never know unless we go ahead with the soil testing. Another reason is that the science supports moving forward. Though we did not want to wade into the larger project tonight, if ultimately approved, the science behind the cabling bears mentioning. The World Health Organization has determined that there are no health impacts from the type of EMFs created by the underground power lines used to connect offshore wind turbines to the grid. Offshore wind developers are adopting high voltage direct current HVDC cables. EMFs from high voltage direct current cables are not a health threat. HVDC produces EMFs similar to the Earth's natural magnetic field. There is no effect on health of these EMFs. Denying a wind company access to conduct its testing amounts to delay and obstruction of offshore wind and could impede the Commonwealth's goal of achieving net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. Requiring a wind project to make a more expensive and less feasible landfall would increase electricity costs for all of us. A prospect, a very unfortunate prospect given the spikes in energy costs, including, as we saw tonight, the dramatic increase in costs of fossil fuels. Fossil fuels that are contributing to climate change.
You're at your time,
Okay,
Ms.
could I
Carey, if you could
request
move
2
along.
more minutes?
I'll give you
I'm
another
almost
minute.
done.
Go ahead.
Okay.
You're over now. You're at 6:40.
Okay. Falmouth Town meetings and some member of this board have a long history of listening to all sides and supporting renewable energy initiatives. In 2019, we passed the stretch code, which led to green communities, Falmouth becoming a green community. We voted a climate emergency ban, approved a plastic water bottle ban, and zoning changes to a large solar farm. We also approved the hiring of a sustainability director. So because of the reasons, I won't go into my summary due to lack of time, but final thought, I know it's that asking your support can seem a little odd, given the article is seeking to reverse a decision that you voted for. I hope with some time and reflection and a strong vote from town meeting, you'll feel differently about this and resume conversations with offshore wind developers. Thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I see that Article 16 and 17, they have been withdrawn, is that correct?
Well, they, Madam Chair, they can't technically be withdrawn. The question is if, and I did speak with Patty Johnson just earlier today, and she confirmed that she does not want to put a positive motion before town meeting. I think she can sum that up in 1 minute.
Okay.
Will we be making any comments on these, or just
No,
accepting the?
there will be no
accepting the
comments.
report?
There are no comments
Next
on
meeting.
the petition articles until next week.
All right.
This week, and I said that at the beginning, this is an opportunity for them simply to present. Next week, there will be more conversation, and then we'll have to vote on a recommendation on each of them.
All right, thank you.
Okay? Hi, Ms. Johnson.
For the public, my name is Patricia Johnson, and I am one of the petitioners for this article on leaf blowers. I'm here tonight to request that you vote indefinite postponement for the article. There was plenty of coverage of last week's presentation before the Board of Health in the enterprise, and I feel strongly that this is not the time to request a partial ban on leaf blowers. The technology is not there, and we have to respect that, and you'll see me again. So I vote you on both of the articles, because one is the article and one is the fine stuff. So indefinite postponement's fine with me, and thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. Okay, that covers 16 and 17. Petition article number 18. Philip Gessen.
Is there an email I could send my presentation to? I wasn't aware of the format. I'd assume that I could send it along. Is that too late?
I have a thumb drive. Put it on.
Do you have a USB-C converter, unfortunately? Okay. Is this connected to the internet?
Yeah.
Okay. If you give me.
You have 5 minutes total. So
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
It may be better to just make verbal comments.
Okay. Yeah, all right, let's do that then. So. My name is Philip Gesson. I'm a resident of Falmouth from Precinct 1. I graduated Falmouth High School several years ago, 2020, and now I'm a junior at UMass Amherst. And I'm here because I believe that we need to change our relationship with single-use plastics. So years ago, as a high schooler, I didn't really understand the magnitude of the issue of plastic. I would buy takeout food in a plastic container, eat the contents inside, and throw away the bottle with a clear conscience, throw away the food with a plastic container with a clear conscience. But for all intents and purposes, the container ceased to exist for me because those statistics, that understanding wasn't there. And then I learned about the stats, that since the 1980s, we've produced 8.3 billion metric tons of plastic. Out of that enormous number, about 1 billion has been incinerated, leaving us with over 7.3 billion tons of plastic. And where does that plastic go? Our ecosystems. A recent study that analyzed 12 million pieces of litter across bodies of water, lakes, rivers, oceans, the seafloor, found that 80% of the litter was plastic, and that around 50% of that litter that was plastic was from takeout. And here's one more statistic that blew my mind, and there are many more that will blow many more minds, but I think this one's worth mentioning, that by 2050, it's estimated, with the exponential growth that we're producing plastic at, there will be more plastic in the world today than there are fish in the sea by weight. And that plastic doesn't go anywhere. It stays for 400 years before it degrades into a material that isn't plastic, but that is still harmful to the environment. And so then a natural question arises, why don't we do recycling? Why don't we use that? Well, recycling, even though you may be repurposing that plastic to put into a different product, you're still creating a product that's lower quality. Then that product may be recycled into an even lower quality product, but eventually you create a product that can't be recycled anymore, and then it ends up in the landfills or in our ecosystems. And it doesn't go away for the next 400 years. And so plastic, it's been shown right now, there are many studies that are coming out now, and they're linking plastic to health concerns, to environmental impacts, to cardiovascular disease, reproductive disorders, obesity, developmental disorders. And so I'm standing here in front of you today. I would show you the petition, but unfortunately, I don't have the presentation in front of me I'm sure that y'all have read it, to ban the specifically food establishments as defined in the petition, from dispensing prepared food to customers in disposable food service containers and utensils made from plastic. Town facility users will also be prohibited from dispensing prepared food with these items. And public schools, private schools, educational institutions, summer camps, child care facilities, and other child care programs approved to participate in the USDA Child Nutrition Program are exempt. The enforcement would be a warning and then a fine, followed by subsequent higher fines if the warnings and fines aren't enough and the offender continues to offend. So this petition, it is a Falmouth petition, but it's also part of a Cape-wide initiative. I'm part of an organization called Sustainable Practices, and we're filing in Brewster, Harwich, Provincetown, Sandwich, Orleans, Chatham, Eastham, and Dennis to have this be a Cape-wide initiative. And the initiative is about promoting behavioral change. It's about promoting reuse over single use. Whether that be customers bring in their own takeout containers if they want to take food home from the restaurant, or restaurants offering their own reusable options to which customers can take them home and then rent them for free for a couple weeks and then get charged for the rental fees and the essential, if they don't return it, the cost of that product. There are businesses out there that I would show you a couple products if I could, but there are businesses out there that specialize in helping places transform to these sustainable, reusable products. And so the goal of this initiative, it's a K-Pod initiative, is to transition Falmouth and take another step towards becoming a greener economy and a more sustainable, create a more sustainable world. So I'll close with saying that this is an important step to change our relationship and regard towards items that we use once and then dispose of. We need to live more sustainably. Living in Falmouth and on the Cape, whether we like it or not, we're leaders in environmental action. As a coastal community whose identity is strongly tied to the beautiful nature around us, whether we act or not, both has an impact. And since the passings of the municipal bottle ban and the commercial bottle ban, which was also done through sustainable practices, we've heard from many municipalities in New York, California, Rhode Island, several other towns in Massachusetts. And they're looking to move forward with their own petitions, their own municipal articles, their own initiatives to move towards a greener world. So these decisions that we're making here today, or I guess not today, on the 27th and then at town meeting, they have a ripple effect that's much bigger than just this municipality. So we can have a large-scale impact by moving forward with this, and this is another step towards building a greener future. That's all I'll say.
Thank you, Mr. Gesson.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a couple questions. Okay, ask questions? Okay.
Okay, our next petition article is number 19 from Dr. Sandra Feynman Silva.
You have the phone number right there.
Yep. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Hello?
Hi, Dr. Feynman Silva. This is Nancy Taylor
Yes.
calling. Would you like to speak to your petitioner article number 19?
I would. The connection is very bad.
We can hear you.
You can?
Yes.
There's a lot of static.
We can hear you fairly well, actually.
Okay. All right.
So go ahead. You
Let's
have
get going.
5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you. As you know, I'm sponsoring Article 19, a resolution at Falmouth Town Meeting, and this is part of a statewide campaign to permanently change the Massachusetts state flag, seal, and motto. You may ask, why does it need to change, and is this the proper venue to deliberate on this subject? The state flag, relatively unchanged since its adoption in 1898, is shown at public gatherings and in public buildings throughout the state, including in this building, yet we seldom have the need or opportunity to ask what it signifies or to scrutinize it closely. This article asks us to do just that, to consider the images on the flag, what they mean, their history and context, and we ask, how do the subjects depicted on the flag, Native Americans, feel about those depictions? And how do we, Massachusetts residents, for whom the flag embodies core ideas, values, and beliefs, feel about this flag? Flags, mottos, and seals contain cultural symbols that capture our fundamental values and beliefs as members of organizations, communities, states, and nations. As responsible citizens, we need to know what our flag symbols and images mean and convey, and ask whether these images are appropriate to us and to our community as a whole. As citizens, we have a responsibility to critically examine our state flag and the images and words it contains, because not only does it belong to us, but it reflects our core values, beliefs, and attitudes. 38 years after former Representative Byron Rushing of Boston, acting in cooperation with the late director of the Massachusetts Commission on Indian Affairs, John Slow Turtle Peters, who was a prominent member of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, first introduced legislation to establish a special commission to change the flag and seal of Massachusetts. We are still upholding the imagery, supposed to express the highest ideals of our Commonwealth, of a white hand holding a drawn sword over the head of an Indigenous person. That is our state symbol. Peace under the sword, but peace with liberty, reads the Latin motto underneath. This is the symbolism we teach our grade school children each year when they study the state flag and seal as part of the elementary school curriculum. This is the symbolism our elected officials share with all of their constituents on letters and documents, part of the daily working of our state bureaucracy. Flags, public monuments, and symbols have become sources of contention when the symbols and imagery contain what is viewed as objectionable by the subjects of these depictions. The swastika has been condemned because of its use in the Holocaust. Monuments, flags, and other public images related to slavery have become contentious artifacts as we grapple with the appropriateness of naming spaces and displaying images related to slavery. We have also questioned using names for athletic teams that stereotype and often demean Native Americans, such as the Kansas City Chiefs, Cleveland Indians, and Washington Redskins. These are all exercises in deep critical analysis of our history, culture, beliefs, and values, a process essential to the growth of us as individuals, communities, and as a nation. Massachusetts' debate over the state flag has been ongoing for nearly 40 years, and now is the time that we must redraw it. Research has shown that renderings on our state flag, the individual depicted, clothing worn, the sword, and other features stereotype and demean Native Americans generally, and Massachusetts Indians in particular. And some of these offensive tropes are detailed in the resolution before town meeting. More than 56 cities and towns in Massachusetts have passed similar resolutions, including several towns on Cape Cod. The state legislature, after agreeing last year to change the state flag and seal, established a commission to come up with a suitable replacement. The commission expired in early January and will need to be, and may already have been, reauthorized so it can complete its work. I ask you to vote to recommend endorsing Article 19 so we can finally complete the process begun more than 40 years ago to permanently change our state flag and seal and honor our First Nations communities as they deserve. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for calling in. Go ahead.
Are you going to deliberate or?
No, we're just, tonight's the presentation. We will be deliberating our recommendations on the 27th.
Okay.
All right?
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye-bye. Okay, we will move on to acting as trustees of the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund, discussion and vote on application from the Affordable Housing Committee for funds in the amount of $9,500 to retain Brian Switzer Video to create an affordable housing video.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did outline the application earlier, and I'm happy to take any questions the board may have. We also have with us tonight Kerry Walton, the chair of the Affordable Housing Committee.
Are there any questions regarding this request?
No, I actually spoke with Brian about it a few months ago, and he explained the intent, and I thought it was a good idea. I encouraged it. I've seen the Nantucket video, and it's quite a bit longer. I think that the intent with this one is to be a little more concise.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the board, acting as trustees of the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund, approve an expenditure of $9,500 from the fund to retain the services of Brian Switzer to create a video outlining the affordable housing issues in our community and authorize the interim town manager to expend said funds for this purpose.
Second?
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll move on. Acting as trustees of the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund, discussion and vote on an application from the Affordable Housing Committee to request funding in the amount of $30,000 to hire a consultant to update the housing production plan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this report expires, I believe, the end of this calendar year. This is the same cost, approximately the same cost as we paid 5 years ago when the plan was produced at that time. I certainly feel that there's been enough change that it's, not only is it required in order to maintain our eligibility with the Department of Housing and Community Development for relief under Chapter 40B, I also feel like, we're due for an update, and, I think perhaps the priorities may have changed, but in any event, it would be timely to have this analysis done.
Questions or comments, Mr. Patterson?
And you indicated you don't really have the staff at hand to do this.
Yeah, I do really feel, thank you, Mr. Patterson, that the housing production plan, as you may recall, was some 80 pages, I think, last time. And although I will say that I'm going to implore the housing coordinator to work with the consultant to prepare a much more succinct report. There are many required elements. It requires some research and analysis. So I think the housing coordinator has her hands full with the day-to-day business of moving our affordable housing projects together. I don't feel it's within her scope to be able to produce this report herself.
Crowd control.
Any other discussion?
I think we need to do it. It's just part of doing business with the affordable housing world.
If I may make a motion? I move that the board, acting as trustees of the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund, approve an expenditure of $30,000 from the fund to retain the services of a consultant to update the housing production plan and authorize an interim town manager to expend said funds for this purpose.
I'll second Ms. Scott Price's motion.
I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, discussion on the Sustainability Coordinator job description. 5 minutes, Mr. Johnson-Staub.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You have a draft of the job description in your packet. You will note that I am proposing a sustainability coordinator position, not a sustainability director position. That is intentional, where the town is just beginning its work in this area. My proposal is that this be a worker position, that this would be a person to seek out grant opportunities, to write grant applications, to assemble some of the existing information on our energy consumption, and work with the Cape Light Compact and other regional entities where resources are available to prioritize our energy efficiency initiatives, likewise to research renewable energy projects. So it's really a project management position to deliver material results is the vision that I have for this job description.
And you've all had the opportunity to take a look at the proposed job description, and we understand from your report that you have had feedback from stakeholders?
I have had a conversation with the chair of the Energy Committee, and she is going to, the Energy Committee itself will be taking a look at the job description, providing input as well, but I've not yet received that input from the committee.
Okay, so this is in draft form.
Yes. And I welcome your feedback.
And we've all had an opportunity to look at it. Any feedback from the board? Mr. Patterson?
Yeah, I think, I know it says physical requirements on the third page, but I think there needs to be something in there about if it's an effective communicator to citizens, to town staff, and to contractors in pursuing their work.
Of course.
Communication skills are so essential
Yep.
to really moving any initiative forward. And so I'd like to see that added as a a requirement for the candidate.
It is touched on, Mr. Patterson, at the paragraph at the top of page 3. Effective verbal and written communication skills.
Okay, excuse me.
We can certainly beef that up, though.
I read over, I have to look past that one. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments?
I mean, it seems like it's right to me. I've never hired a sustainability coordinator, so I'm not sure if I would miss something if it's not in here, but, I mean, it seems complete.
Yeah, it seems very thorough. I would like to hear what the Energy Committee has to say, because I'm sure that they've dug into this a bit.
And I think we have looked at other job descriptions of sustainability
Yeah, I
directors
pulled-
/ coordinators.
I pulled from a half a dozen to cobble this together, and I did have a great conversation with Megan Amsler, the chair of the Energy Committee, and she said she would be providing me, actually, I know she already has provided me with some written comments that I have not yet incorporated. She just sent those to me today.
Okay. So we're looking for...
Would we say that, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. Brown.
Are we going to then see this again before we?
Not necessarily, so we don't typically have the select board vote to approve job descriptions, but where this is a new position and it's, the job description is going to be shared with the finance committee and town meeting, I certainly wanted, if the substance of what I'm proposing to do is off base in any way and not consistent with the board's vision, I certainly want to hear that and adjust it, but we don't require a select board vote on the details of the job description.
But I do appreciate you bringing it to us because it was one of our priorities in our strategic planning.
The one
And
thing
I
would
think it
notice-
is important, let me just finish. I
Okay.
think it is important to just share it with us. We won't vote on it, we'll give it back to you, you'll get further feedback, and we'll move.
Okay. The one thing I noticed, it says, evaluate renewable energy opportunities with input, support conversion of municipal vehicle fleet to electrical vehicles, which should also be, we're going to convert buildings to electrification as well. So you might want to make a note of that because that'll be the bigger lift.
Great suggestion, thank you.
I thought about that when we were talking, I think it might have been the last meeting or 2 meetings ago, about redoing the roofs on the schools, and potentially that's the time to add solar. So that kind of thing. I assume that whoever this person is would be interested in looking into that. Maybe that goes along the lines of what Doug was saying.
And I also would hope that I think another way to achieve the same thing was to, work with the school superintendent to make sure that we're thinking that way. Right? That when we do replace roofs or we do things like that, we're thinking of energy in that way.
Certainly mirrors what we spoke about on strategic planning. I think it's very well done.
That's so too.
Thank you.
All right, any other discussion on that? We're not going to vote it. We're going to take it back to Mr. Johnson Staub as a draft, and then he will finish that up. Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. I will read through the consent items. If any board member would like to discuss one of them, please let me know to hold the item. Approve a grant of license to William and Carol Brenner to maintain an existing post and rail fence along the eastern edge of their property, which encroaches onto the road layout at 3 Ruth Terrace. Approve application to the Cape Cod Commission for 2023 District Local Technical Assistance DLTA Fund for the town's open space and recreation plan. Vote to amend the Select Board naming policy. Affirm seasonal wage schedule for the calendar year of 2023, and the difference being fiscal versus calendar?
Exactly right.
Okay. So I don't hear any holds. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Okay, review and vote to approve minutes of the meetings. Public session, October 24, 2022.
I just want to make a general comment that I thought these were really thorough. Everything down to saying that the chair told the person that they have 15 minutes, and So I thought they were really thorough.
Agreed.
Well done.
Any, particularly Mr. Patterson or Ms. Scott Price, any edits?
Oh,
that
Diane
you
did them. Sorry.
Thought were needed?
I found them to be substantially correct, and so I would move approval of the minutes of Monday, October 24th, 2022, and release to the public.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Please give an extra thank you to Diane, because I just realized that her name is signed.
Yes.
Yeah, that's huge. That's a lot of work.
Yes, it was.
It's a lot of work.
It took her quite a bit of time.
Okay, Town Manager's supplemental report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. FEMA recently posted a notice of funding opportunity announcing that SAFER grants will be accepted starting today through March 17th of this year. As the board is aware, SAFER grants are staffing for fire and emergency response. So those are grants that that communities can apply for to fund firefighter positions. We had been monitoring this for a year and did not think that there would be a timely grant round to fit our fire staffing needs, but this notice of funding opportunity says that the awards will be made between June 2nd and September 30th of this year. So what that means is it is, if we were to apply, and I'll cut to the chase and say, I think we should apply, and I will be bringing a recommendation for select board action at the next meeting. We will not know until after town meeting and after the election whether or not the town is going to get a SAFER grant. But the good news here is that we can make it fit. It actually fits quite nicely with the override amount that the select board has voted. Because as you know, the override only funds a portion of the 14 firefighters that we need to hire. So my suggestion would be that we apply for a grant for the balance of the fund, so $550,000 approximately, to fund the portion of the 14 firefighters that's not funded with the override. What that would do, the grant funds, and I was unable to find in reading through the grant quickly, I'm not sure it's in the notice of funding opportunity. If it is, I missed it. The way the grant has worked in the past is it provides a certain amount of funding for 3 years. And in some years, it was 100% the first year, 75% the second year, 50% the third year. Most recently, there were additional COVID funds made available, and it was 100% for 3 years. So what that does is it gives the town time to plan to fit the positions within the budget. It is not a permanent budget solution. It's a temporary budget solution. So under no circumstances would we be able to apply for a grant for 14 firefighters. Even if we have 3-4 years to plan for that, it still leaves us with $1 million hole in the budget. I don't know that I would, or sorry, $1,500,000 hole, that we would need to somehow find a way to fit that into the budget. I think that's too big a hill to climb, personally. So, again, in summary, I think it fits well. It dovetails well with the override amount of $950,000. We apply for the balance. It buys us more time to fit that balance of budget that is not going to be met by the override to fully fund the 14 firefighter wages plus benefits.
Lucky timing.
A drum you've been beating for a long time. Just saying.
I also wanted to comment on the status of the Mayflower Wind, now known as South Coast Wind project. Just to clarify where the town stands, as I understand it, and certainly if I am off base, I want to hear from the board on it, and we can discuss it at a future meeting. The board did recently vote not to approve an access agreement, which South Coast Wind sought to perform preliminary investigations, including soil sampling, to prepare more detailed plans for the proposed electric cable landfall. South Coast Wind representatives have indicated to me since that Select Board vote that they are continuing to move forward with their plans for a landfall in Falmouth. They plan to hold one or more public forums not sponsored by or involving the town, and they intend to file updated plans with the Massachusetts Energy Facility Siting Board sometime this spring, is what they recently told me. I did ask if they had a plan to address the board's denial of the access agreements, and the representative I spoke with said that they were not able to comment on that at this time. I want to make clear that staff will continue to monitor the project and occasionally communicate with South Coast representatives so the town is informed of the status of the project. However, neither staff nor the board is actively engaged in any negotiation of a potential host community agreement at this time. The board has not yet taken a position to oppose or support the project, and I suggest future Select Board discussion will be needed after South Coast submits an updated plan to the town and ultimately to the Energy Facility Sightings Board to determine whether the board wishes to actively oppose or support EFSB approval of the project application.
Could I ask for clarification? When you said they would be holding public forums, it will not involve the town? Is that what I heard you say?
Correct. Right.
What does that mean?
That means they're communicating directly with the public. They're not asking for the town to sponsor it. They're not asking for the town to play a role in it. They're just directly interacting with the public.
But they will be, it will be the town of Falmouth being there listening.
Members of the Falmouth community.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. I
Not
misunderstood
us.
that. It didn't sound.
And we're not precluded,
sound
the
right.
Select Board's not precluded from going.
No,
and
absolutely not, but-
participating. The point being, I'm drawing a contrast from the last forum,
Yes.
which was initiated by and hosted by the Select
Okay,
Board.
thank you. It will not
This
be
is something
us.
that they're organizing, they're hosting.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Upcoming meetings, your next meeting is February 27th, at which you'll be voting article recommendations. There will also be a presentation from the town planner and housing coordinator on future uses of the Emerald and Raposa properties. On March 13th, at that meeting, we will have a brief presentation on options for expanding tax exemptions and abatements. There is a meeting March 27th. I don't have any particular items to highlight at this time. And then April 1st, there is a scheduled Saturday workshop at which the board will discuss selected policies, and there will also be Select Board training on a handful of items that we've spoken about. And then, of course, April 10th is town meeting. And that concludes my report.
Great. Thank you. Select Board reports. Mr. Brown?
I did attend the meeting at Precinct 4 at the East Falmouth School to discuss housing concerns voiced by residents, and it was and Peter Johnson Staub attended, and Angela Scott Price attended. And it was interesting just to hear from the residents about what their concepts of what we should be doing are and what they need. And we heard from that one young lady who is well-employed, but just slipping between the cracks of being able to get housing assistance and being able to actually afford a house. So she was asking, I think, for us to consider the 120% of median income for, making housing affordable. So that was sad, but, important to hear. I attended on Friday of last week the Cape and Islands Municipal Leaders Association, and Sam also attended that. I was encouraged to hear that Provincetown took the initiative to draft their own Vale in Deed version, the Provincetown version of Vale in Deed, where you deed restrict housing to be only used for year-round housing. There's no other really restriction on the Vale model anyways. I haven't really seen the P-Town model, but she said she was going to email it around to us. So maybe we'll consider taking that up in a future meeting. And those are the two highlights of my week. I'm going to go to the planning board meeting tomorrow on Valentine's. I told my wife I'd take her. We'll go to the planning board meeting for Valentine's Day.
Good luck.
You know, I
Have her call me.
when I was chair, we had a select board meeting on Valentine's Day, and she was like, "What were you thinking?" And now I'm taking her to a planning board meeting because it's an important one. There's a lot of stuff that's going on. They're talking about the short-term rental legislation that Sue Miranda's crafting, which really, it's an attempt to get a handle on it rather than restrict it. So it wasn't exactly what I had envisioned when I asked her to take it up, but at least it's something, and it's a step forward, so.
Thank you.
And that's it.
Mr. Patterson?
Nothing to report.
Really? Really? Make
Nothing.
something up.
Right.
Scott Price?
Yeah, I don't think I actually have, oh, well, I was at the same meeting that Doug and Peter were at, talking about affordable housing, which I thought was great. I'm glad that Barb Schneider started to do that. And just a reminder, there are 2 more Black History Month events. There's a lecture this Thursday at Falmouth Academy, and then there's going to be another lecture next Friday online.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I attended my committee assignments, Solid Waste Advisory Committee, Historical. Haven't made it to the bike and pedestrian yet, a little cold for that. But those committees continuously impress me with their dedication and their input and their drive. Saturday, I attended the zoning board, which is another committee assignment of mine, the workshop with town council and assistant town council, and I found it, as many years as I served on that board, I found this to be the most intuitive, collaborative meeting, workshop with that board since I've been part of, you know, whatever level of that board. It was very, very well done and very well received by all the participants. So I'm happy to make that report.
I have a couple of things. The Commission on Disabilities, they're looking at a self-assessment in terms of what, you know, what's going on in our town. I also attended the Board of Health because I saw that what was on their agenda, and I thought it was important to hear from everyone on one of our articles, Mrs. Johnson's article, and that was very well done. We went to the wastewater quality management meeting this afternoon. Doug was there. Mr. Johnson-Staub was there, and that was interesting to listen to their recommendations and how they're moving forward with the DEP regulations. And I also, last week, went to, with Ms. Scott Price, and certainly Mr. Johnson-Staub was there, the FinCom meeting to listen to the budget. So that, it was a busy week. Okay, discussion on future agenda items.
I'd like to add one that I think we need to have a discussion of the Mayflower Wind proposal and just kind of recap to date the interaction, not everything that was said in our meetings, but just a general sense of how we've communicated or not communicated with them. Because we're in an odd position now where they're going to come to town and have another forum, and their forums just, they're like, hey, let's everybody love wind, and it's great, and we should love wind, but I feel like they need to come and negotiate with us if they really want to do something on town property, and they're just trying to do everything through the back door, and I think we really need to talk about it.
And I think our vote was misunderstood.
Yeah.
And I think that could be a point of that discussion as well.
Right.
Any other agenda items?
I see we have the future policy thing coming up in March, so that's good. I'm sorry I haven't emailed you those, but I have my little list with me, so I'll send them along.
Mr. Patterson?
Well, it just sounded like Amy Lowell said that they might be getting ready to give us a report on that Robbins Road lift station. We're now into February. We talked about it back in September, so it seems like a long time without any progress.
Yeah, I think what Ms. Lowell indicated is that, if I recall correctly, that it was March that we were expecting the engineering report that was evaluating the options for that lift station.
I think it was, she had asked for 6 months, is that correct?
Yeah.
And I think the reason we left it open to go back and let the developer come to us several times was in case they wanted to come up with any ideas of their own. And Amy had her own time frame for what she could do, but we gave them the opportunity if they wanted to make any suggestions about maybe they would want to put a lift station on their own property or something, but I guess they haven't done that, so.
Who was having that conversation?
Well, I think that Amy mentioned that the developer could consider other options if they wanted to. So to me, that means maybe they would consider their own lift station, but I'm just taking a guess, I don't know.
Maybe we could get an update on a March agenda, that would be great. Anything else for upcoming agendas? Okay, hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.